Okay, we're going to go back to integers for a while for the next few videos, and we're going to have a look at a few properties of integers. But before we do all that, let's just remind ourselves what an integer is. The symbol for integers, the set of integers, is the symbol Z with this kind of a line going down the side of it. And integers are, well, they're positive and negative whole numbers and 0. So 0 is an integer, plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 3, all the way up to plus or minus infinity. So any positive or negative whole numbers and 0 is an integer. Okay, so the first property of integers is called the closure property. And it's very, very simple. In any of these properties that I'm talking about, a and b are always integers. So anytime I mention a and b, I'm talking about an integer. So the closure property just says that if a and b are integers, then a plus b is an integer, and a times b is also an integer. So what exactly do I mean by that? Well, let's have a look at two integers. So say 5 and 7. 5 is an integer, 7 is an integer. So the closure property says that if 5 is an integer and if 7 is an integer, then 5 plus 7 will also be an integer. And it is, we can see here, 5 plus 7 is 12. And it also says that 5 multiplied by 7 will give us an integer, which it does. So that's the closure property, very, very simple. The commutative property says that a plus b will equal b plus a. It just all it's saying is that it doesn't matter the order that we add things. If I add 3 plus 2, that's the same as adding 2 plus 3. It doesn't matter the order that I do it. Or if I multiply a multiplied by b, that's the same as multiplying b by a. It doesn't matter the order. So 3 times 2 will be the same as 2 times 3. So that's the commutative property. Just doesn't matter the order that I add or multiply integers. The associative property says that if a and b are integers, then it's when we're adding more than more than two integers. If I add a plus b, and if I add them first and then add c, that's the same as adding b plus c first and then adding a. So for example, if I have this, if I got 3 plus 2, and if I put that in brackets, and then I add 4 after that, so I added 3 and 2 first and then 4, that's the same as going 3 plus and then adding the 2 plus 4. So adding the 2 plus 4 first and adding that to 3. Because if you look at it, 3 and 2 is 5, 5 plus 4 is 9. And over here we've got 2 plus 4, which is 6, and 3 plus 6 is also 9. So again, when you're adding integers, it doesn't matter the order. The distributive property says that a multiplied by b plus c. This is something that we use in algebra all the time, and you've used it a lot. A multiplied by, so we've got bracket, b plus c is the same as ab plus ac. So I just multiply whatever number is here, I multiply it by b, and then I multiply it by a. So we get ab plus ac. So that's called the distributive property. And then the fifth property is called the identity property. So with integers, there's two identity elements. 0 is called the identity element of addition, and 1 is called the identity element of multiplication. The reason they're called the identity elements, well, if I take the identity element of addition, if I take any integer and add on the identity element, I should end up with that integer again. So if I take 5 and I add 0, I still end up with 5. So that's why 0 is called the identity element of addition. 1 is the identity element of multiplication, because if I multiply any integer by 1, I won't change the integer, I'll still be left with the integer. So 5 times 1 gives me 5. 6 by 1 will give me 6. So that's called the identity property, and 0 is the identity element of addition and 1 is the identity element of multiplication. And the last property of integers that we're going to have a look at is called the additive, I suppose it's called the additive inverse property if you want. It just says that for every integer a, there exists another integer minus a, such that a plus minus a will give me 0. So all it's saying is that for every integer that you can think of, there's, I suppose, the opposite integer, such that when you add the integer and its opposite, you'll get 0. So if we look at a few examples, if I take the number 5, the additive inverse of 5 is minus 5, because 5 plus minus 5 will give me 0. The additive inverse of minus 4 will be 4, because minus 4 plus 4 will give me 0. If I take, let me think, so say if I take minus 10, so minus 10 plus the additive inverse of 10 will give me 0. So this property here is saying there's some number that I can add to minus 10 that will give me 0. And that number is 10, because minus 10 plus 10 will give me 0. So minus a is called the additive inverse of a. Okay, in the next two videos we're going to have a look at some proofs involving these properties of integers. So we're going to prove that a negative integer multiplied by a negative integer gives us a positive integer. So a minus by minus gives us a plus. And what's the other one we're going to look at? We're going to look at the proof that an integer multiplied by 0 will give us 0. So for example, 5 times 0 gives us 0. That one's pretty obvious, but again, because it's maths, it has to be proven. Everything in maths has to be proven.